Welcome to Tritiyo Matra. The Nordic nations of Norway, Sweden and Denmark are some of the most developed countries in the world. These nations regularly rank at the top in most human development indexes and are leading representatives of renewable energy development and green and sustainable economic growth. The Nordic nations have also provided generous amounts of development assistance to Bangladesh, including aid for the ongoing Rohingya refugee crisis. Today, we will discuss the future of Bangladesh's relations with Denmark, Norway and Sweden. Joining us for the discussion are three esteemed guests. To my left, the Ambassador of Denmark to Bangladesh, Winnie Estrup Petersen. Next to her, the Norwegian Ambassador to Bangladesh, Espen Rikter-Svendsen. And at the end of the table, the Swedish Ambassador to Bangladesh, Alexandra Berg von Linde. Ambassadors, welcome to the show. I have a very common few questions for all of you. Each of one can pick up any question and others can supplement. The Nordic countries were some of the first countries to have recognized independent Bangladesh. This year, Denmark, Norway and Sweden are celebrating 50 years of bilateral relations. Indeed, the bilateral friendship has evolved over the decades. How do you say the relationship has developed? Who can pick these questions?
I think I'll start, if colleagues don't mind. So thank you very much for having us on this show. And it's a special time for us, of course, as we celebrate 50 years of bilateral relations with Bangladesh. We are proud to have been some of the early recognizers of an independent and free Bangladesh. We took national decisions that were coordinated on the 4th of February 1972. And this year for us is a year of both looking at has-been and the partnership that we have had during these last 5 decades, but also looking forward and seeing both bilaterally but also as Nordics, how is our relationship with Bangladesh going to be defined in the future. I think if we look back, we have stood by Bangladesh in both challenges and successes, and we are proud to have been contributors to the tremendous development journey that Bangladesh has undertaken. We started out, of course, with humanitarian aid, and then this relationship grew into long-term development cooperation with long-term achievements and successes. I think all of us have been active in areas such as education, gender equality, health, and so on. And I think what we see now is a partnership in transition. So we are still here with development cooperation, but we also see a dynamic, a broad relation. We see interest from many Nordic companies and potential to develop our trade relations. So in all, a broad and dynamic relationship under transition.
Would you like to add anything, anyone? No. And then looking ahead, could you elaborate on how the business relations between the Nordic countries and Bangladesh have expanded during these last 5 decades?
May I take that?
Yeah,
let me start by congratulating Bangladesh with the graduation from LDC status and with really the remarkable economic and social progress over the last 5 decades since our partnership started. Bangladesh is one of the fastest growing economies in the region and indeed worldwide. And we see a great scope for even stronger trade relations, and that's where we're going. We see actually that Nordic companies are increasingly interested in Bangladesh market as it transitions to an emerging market in the region. You know, Nordic countries are known for driving sustainable and climate smart solutions. And these solutions we aim to bring in to support Bangladesh in its own green growth agenda. Our companies in Bangladesh cover a wide range of sectors. They're in water, they're in energy, connectivity and digitalization, they're in smart cities, and waste management, just to mention a few. Areas that will all be a priority for us and that Bangladesh can really benefit from during the years to come. Now, may I just add that in order to attract more foreign companies, it's also very important to have predictability. Companies thrive in predictability, and they're generally more comfortable doing business in a rules-based environment. So that is also why digitalization that the government has undertaken in the public sector is a great help to bring more accountability and predictability to our businesses. So it helps bringing in more businesses. So yeah, we are very glad to see our relationships transform during these years.
Great.
So maybe
Great.
my colleague will add.
Maybe I could just add a few things. I think Nordic companies are known for their ability and their strength in combining economic growth with sustainable development and with reducing CO2 emissions, as well as using natural resources in a sustainable way. This is something we are known for, and which is, I think, very, very relevant also for Bangladesh. And if I may point to one other thing, it's anything to do with the oceans, the sea. Bangladesh is a water-rich country, and the blue economy and marine and maritime economy is also something where all the Nordic countries are very strong, and also where Bangladesh has a lot of potential.
Thank you. Climate change is a collective focus for all governments in the world, but the Nordic countries have taken leadership in the reducing greenhouse gas emissions within the decade. How can Bangladesh make progress in this area, and how can the Nordics help?
Well, let me start just by saying that from part of the Nordics, climate and environment is really in our DNA. That is something that is intrinsic with our national characters, I would say. And this is when we talk about a future partnership and a sustainable partnership, tackling the global challenges. With Bangladesh is of course on top of that agenda, not least when it comes to the negative consequences of climate change and environment degradation. Bangladesh is a climate vulnerable country, but Bangladesh has also shown itself to be a pioneer in disaster risk reduction and disaster management. We were all early providers with support, for instance, when it comes to early warning systems and cyclone shelters, and we are proud of that contribution. And I think from part of the Nordics, we will continue to engage in mitigation and adaptation with Bangladesh. As you yourself mentioned, we have ambitious climate goals ourselves nationally. From part of Norway and Denmark, they are committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by at least 40% and 70% by 2030. And from part of Sweden, we are committed to reducing emissions to net zero by 2045 at the latest. I think also, as my Danish colleague mentioned, we have a lot of knowledge when it comes to sustainable technological development, and I think that here there is an interest from part of Nordic companies to share that experience with Bangladesh and partner in that sense. Then last but not least, we are also committed on the global level. All of us are big providers of international climate finance to different relevant funds, and are also engaged in trying to have Bangladesh also accessing these funds. So I think that our ambition is multifaceted in terms of climate change and countering those negative consequences.
Ambassadors, sustainability is a key pillar of Nordic societies. Your countries are taking global leadership in climate action, with the Nordic region said to be the most sustainable and integrated region in the world by 2030. What are your views on Bangladesh and its progress in this area? Who's taking this question?
I think we are we are seeing a very strong consciousness about this in Bangladesh now, and we see that Bangladesh has been having a very high profile in the last COP in Glasgow, where even Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina participated. And we see that Bangladesh has been the leader of the climate vulnerable group. So I think the consciousness and the awareness about this issue in Bangladesh is very strong, and that is why we think that we can do our bit also to assist in that, not least by providing our companies who have relevant technology that can help us to solve these issues, and also help us to do, for example, in the maritime sector and in the marine sector, to do to make sure the industries are run in a sustainable manner, and that they are not degrading the environment.
And the Scandinavian nations are renowned for the Nordic model of economic management, which includes a comprehensive welfare state and multi-level collective bargaining powers that originated from a labor movement after World War II. As Bangladesh continues to develop, do you see the potential for a similar kind of labor movement to take root in Bangladesh due to the growing income inequality?
Let me take that.
Yes.
Now, the Nordic model of social welfare, indeed, it provides a social safety net, including free and equal access to health and education and other social services, regardless of income or economic need, to all its citizens. It's a worldwide recognized model, I believe, and often referred to. Actually, the Honorable Prime Minister often refers to her father, pointing to the Nordic countries as a model in all these items. And I'm sure we have somehow inspired his vision for Golden Bangladesh also. Now, of course, that model is very heavily dependent on citizens paying tax, a very high degree of tax, actually. Otherwise, there would be no funds to give all those benefits to the citizens. And there is a broad consensus in our societies that this is good for the businesses, actually. It creates, when people get richer, it creates a better market for them. It's best for the employees, it's best for the poor, of course, but it's also widely accepted by the rich people in our countries. Now, of course, the Nordic experience cannot be replicated as such in a Bangladeshi context, so different. But we hope to inspire with some of the actions we do. And let me highlight just one element, the labor market. We really believe that a stable labor market is good for society, it's good for citizens, it's good for businesses and employees. And of course, it's also decent work is part of the Sustainable Development Goals also. So here in Bangladesh, we all work with a stable labor market and trying to apply our expertise in this area in collaboration with Bangladeshi partners, with ILO, for instance. We are working, Sweden and Denmark are working on tripartite dialogue for more quality-focused and people-centered industries. Denmark also, we support the occupational health and safety through DIFI, and I know my colleagues also have other. So it is a very important input to what we do here that we want to share and inspire most of all.
Would you like to add anything?
Can I just add one important aspect seen from a Bangladeshi perspective, and that is Bangladesh has high ambitions to increase its trade with other countries and to export its products like it's doing now with the ready-made garments and other things. But what we see is a general global trend that consumers in other countries pay really close attention to how the products have been made. And if there is some doubt, if there's some cloud hanging over the Bangladeshi labor market, for example, if there are revelations about the bad practices, if the products are not produced in a sustainable manner, the consumers in the other countries will not buy them. And so there is a considerable amount of consumer power here, which any country or any producer has to take into account and to act accordingly.
Ambassador Alex, would you like to add anything? No.
Well, I can. I think we have, all of us, but Sweden has a lot of Swedish companies engaged in the RMG sector. And they have very high ambitions in terms of their internal climate goals. But there is also EU legislation that is coming that will force companies to look very, as my Norwegian colleague was saying, look very closely on how products are made. So I think that the dialogue that we have with government authorities and trade-related authorities are very important, especially when it comes to transition of the RMG industry, renewable energy, circularity, and high climate goals on the issue. So this is something that we will be continuing to work with and have a dialogue.
That's great. Ambassadors, Bangladesh has been hosting more than 1 million Rohingya refugees since 2017. Since then, we have received aid and logistical support from the West and generous donations from Scandinavian nations to continue hosting the refugees. But repatriation talks have seemingly stalled. What do you believe could be done to create an environment that allows safe and human repatriation of the Rohingya people back into their homeland?
I can start on that one. I think from part of the Nordics, humanitarian issues are very close to our heart, and so is, of course, the Rohingya situation here in Bangladesh. And any conversation about this should, of course, start with commending the government of Bangladesh and the people government of Bangladesh for hosting the Rohingya refugees for such a long time, and until safe and dignified and voluntary return can be provided back to Myanmar. All of us engaged early in this crisis with humanitarian support. Some of us have also looked at it more broadly and are engaged with development cooperation, supporting also the host communities in the district of Cox's Bazar, acknowledging, of course, that it's a very big burden on that district and on Bangladesh as a whole. And we foresee that this engagement will, of course, continue not only with humanitarian support, but also with the diplomatic efforts, where I think that my Norwegian colleague wants to step in.
Yeah, we are, of course, in full agreement on this, and also about the great respect for Bangladesh for hosting this group. Norway is currently an elected member of the United Nations Security Council, and we have been working very hard there to keep the Rohingya issue on the agenda whenever the situation in Myanmar is discussed. Of course, any prospect of repatriation was dealt a big blow by the military coup in Myanmar last year, in February last year. It's been a huge setback, and it's making things more difficult for everybody, not least for the government of Bangladesh. But also we see, of course, for the Rohingyas themselves, that sort of the prospect that they will be staying even longer here Also, of course, necessitates looking into things like education, livelihood, things like that, that can actually have a more or less meaningful life while they are here, and so that we don't develop a sort of a lost generation which has no education and no belief in the future. So we are standing by Bangladesh. We are pushing all we can in international fora to keep this potato hot in a way.
Ambassador Winnie?
Yeah, may I just add that this Rohingya issue is just another expression of how close the Nordic countries stand together on so many international issues, and in our relations with Bangladesh. We may be different when we take a closer look, but actually we stand together also sharing the views on the Rohingyas here.
Ambassadors, the Nordic countries proudly express steadfast commitment to human rights as a priority in foreign policy. Social development is also key to sustainability. How do the Nordic countries engage in the advocacy and protection of human rights?
I think human rights is much more than foreign policy thing. It's one of the foundations of our societies. It's the rules-based system. It's democracy. It's the rights of the citizens. These and the independent institutions. These are the foundations on which a society is how to say is standing. And that's why the human rights is not, it's not a side issue. It's a basic issue. And for example, regarding economic growth, for economic growth to take place, you need, as we talked about earlier, stable markets, predictability, rules-based system, independent courts, ways to solve conflicts, and a level playing field. All of these things are linked to human rights. So promoting human rights is in everything we do. It's the sort of part of the foundation of everything.
Anyone else?
I think I'll wholeheartedly agree with my Norwegian colleague here. I think in terms of the DNA of Nordics, human rights, governance, democracy are definitely in there, and this is something that we will speak about in whatever context we are in. Also, of course, at home, but also with our partners and friends around the world.
And it's so much at the core of the Nordic model that I spoke about before, really.
So, Ambassador Alex, Sweden will host the UN conference on the human environment for the second time, last time in 1972, called Stockholm Plus 50. Could you please tell us a bit more about the background and the purpose of the conference?
Yes. So there's a lot of 1972 in there. I mean, we have, of course, the 50 years Nordic relations to Bangladesh, but 1972 was a little bit of a landmark year, I would say, also for the discussion on international level when it comes to environment, above all. And we hosted that first landmark UN conference in Stockholm that gave birth to a number of things, but among other things there was a recognition that environment needs to be institutionalized within the UN system. So UNEP, the United Nations Environment Program, was born. Many countries set up their environment ministries after that. There's a lot that came out of that conference. But above all, I think it was the recognition of the interlinkage between environment and climate, environment and poverty. And the start of the discussion between developing and industrialized countries about how we could go about tackling this. And now, 50 years later, of course, A lot of achievements have been done, but there is also a lot of challenges left. So the Stockholm Plus 50 conference that will be hosted by Sweden and Kenya and UNEP in Stockholm in the beginning of June is a way of assessing, assessing where we have come from and where we are going, and also acknowledging the linkages between climate, environment and development, that you need to look at the agenda holistically in order to tackle it. So I think it will be a very important conference, and we also look to have a more inclusive dialogue. So we have invited youth from all over the world, civil societies, business, government representatives will of course be there, but in an attempt and an effort to acknowledge that these issues are linked together and that they need to be tackled together. Bangladesh is coming on minister level, and that we are very grateful for. This is something that is of course a high priority also for Bangladesh, as we have been discussing, and I think it's good that we hear Bangladesh also as the leader of the Climate Vulnerable Forum in these contexts.
Ambassador Alex, Sweden has been pursuing a feminist foreign policy for many years. Could you elaborate a bit more about how the feminist foreign policy works in practice and how you see the possibilities to cooperate with Bangladesh in this regard?
Yes, so I think that gender equality, if we start in that end, gender equality is of course something that binds us all together, and as a consequence of that, as a consequence of for many years having promoted gender equality and worked with the gender equality globally, the Swedish government 2014 as the first nation decided to establish a feminist foreign policy. So I represent a feminist government, and I think it comes from the simple assumption that if you want sustainable development, if you want inclusive economic growth, you cannot have that if you leave half of the population behind. All need to be on that development train, so to speak. Basically, what we have done is we work from a policy that we call the 3 R's, which is rights, resources, and representation. And that is integrated in all the foreign policy aspects. So when we talk about the feminist foreign policy, we can talk about foreign policy and security policy, but also in commerce and in development cooperation. So this is something that packages somehow the values of gender equality that we all stand for, and makes it very easy to translate into what we do and the engagement that we have with countries. And of course in Bangladesh we have been engaged with partners in promoting gender equality for a long time, and this is one stepping stone in that road and direction.
Indeed, a great policy. Ambassador Winnie, the green agenda has been a key priority in Bangladesh. You know that Bangladesh-Denmark bilateral relations especially. Denmark is the leading country in the world in achieving green and sustainable economic growth, and has unparalleled experience in the whole range of green issues, practically in wind energy production. Do you believe that Bangladesh could also build the capacity to emulate such sustainable economic growth and renewable energy generation? What steps will Bangladesh need to follow to achieve this goal?
Now, thank you for your question. Let me explain just very shortly what it took for Denmark to take that position, which is now widely recognized in our society, and notably businesses recognizing that green business is good business and can create a lot of jobs, actually. But Danish businesses were forced to become more innovative when, for instance, electricity and water in our societies, even wastewater, you have to pay to get rid of it. So to improve their margins and stay competitive, they had to be innovative. How could they save resources, energy, water, reduce wastewater, etc. And that has been driving that amazing innovation, which is now widely recognized internationally also. When it comes to Bangladesh, of course, the conditions are different. Bangladesh is in a different place. However, we who have lived in Dhaka also see that economic growth to a great extent has come at the expense of environment. There's so much necessity to go green in Bangladesh also, to ensure continued growth, but also make sure that it becomes a green growth. For a start, I think the government has set out very ambitious goals for reducing CO2 emissions, 22% reduction by 2030. It may not sound high, but for a growing country, it's absolutely ambitious. And I think that will also help drive the green transition in Bangladesh. A lot of factories, we all know that Bangladesh has an amazing number of LED certified factories. They see the necessity to go green because that's what their customers want. So there is a good dynamics that has started, and I think with Nordic experience, sharing knowledge and technology, and using our instruments to drive that, Bangladesh can go far, as in so many other areas.
Ambassador Winnie, Bangladesh Foreign Minister A.K. Abdul Momen and Danish Minister for the Development Cooperation Flemming Møller Mortensen signed a document recently on sustainable and green framework engagement. It was stated in the media that the document was aimed at strengthening the partnership on climate and green transition between the two countries. What exactly might this partnership between Denmark and Bangladesh look like?
As was said earlier, 50 years of diplomatic relations is the occasion to look back and see what we achieved, but absolutely also to look forward. So this sustainable and green framework is what will set the pace for our future relationship between Denmark and Bangladesh. It was a good occasion with a ministerial and actually a crown princess visiting Bangladesh to sign this green agreement, setting out our joint intentions for joint action on the climate change, on the green transition. So what we agreed with that is to use all our instruments as two countries working together, diplomatic action in the international scene going together, can be development cooperation, special climate funds, promoting companies to work together, but all for the, and many other instruments, and all to drive that agenda on adapting to and mitigating climate change and go green together. So I have very high expectations. Now we'll work with our Bangladeshi partners to put in the concrete activities, but that is what will set the pace for the next 50 years, maybe.
Ambassador Espen, on April 2022, in a two-day visit to Bangladesh, the Norwegian foreign minister expressed interest in economic partnership through trade, investment and maritime sector cooperation. The discussion focused on many things, particularly the potential for investment in offshore renewable energy. A Norwegian foreign minister also showed interest in Bangladesh shipbreaking industry. What potential does Norway see in renewable energy generation in Bangladesh, and how can Norway help Bangladesh upgrade and modernize the labor-intensive shipbreaking industry?
I'd like to start with the shipbreaking industry, because that's a fascinating industry here in Bangladesh, and it is a sector where Bangladesh is actually a world leader, the world leader at the moment, I think. The sector is undergoing a transformation internationally with the Hong Kong Convention, and Bangladesh is about to ratify that convention. Norway has been working through the IMO with Bangladesh for a number of years to upgrade and modernize shipyards in Bangladesh to international standards. And if Bangladesh is successful in this, it will still continue to be a world leader in the shipbreaking industry. And I have visited the yards down in Chattogram, and I was very impressed with the progress I have seen and the success that our cooperation over the last years has shown. So in my opinion, Bangladesh is on track to becoming a world leader also in the new global environment for shipbreaking. Regarding the visit of our foreign minister only last month, it's true that they talked about many forms of cooperation. We share the oceans. I mean, Norway is a coastal country with a sea territory that is 3 times the land territory. So we've been living off our sea since forever. And there is a huge scope for cooperation in that. There is, of course, the marine resources, fish and other extractions of other things from the sea, but also the energy, of course. Some offshore energy, like offshore wind, has a potential in Bangladesh, but there are also other forms of renewable energy that could be relevant here. I mean, see, for example, the huge masses of water that run through your rivers. Not very steep like in Norway, but still with a very strong flow, and there is a potential for utilizing that dynamic for power generation. So I see a great potential.
Ambassador, in the meeting with the Bangladeshi foreign minister and also with the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, you touched upon preparations for the next general elections in Bangladesh. Mm-hmm. How do you think the next general elections in Bangladesh can be made all-inclusive, and is there any possibility that Norway would send election observers to Bangladesh?
Let me start by referring to what was said previously about the fundamental importance of the democratic institutions in a country, also from an economic perspective. And of course, this upcoming election is extremely important for Bangladesh. It will sort of renew or confirm the credentials of Bangladesh. There is a long process leading up to this election, and it has already started. There has been a law enacted on the election commission. The commission has been appointed, and it has started its consultation. It's a long road to go down, and it's extremely important that all stakeholders in Bangladesh play along in this process and take part in the election when it takes place. Election observers is one part of it, and it's one part that the international community can provide. It will also lend credibility to the elections. Norway has been sending election observers to many elections, and we have a roster of experts in this field that can be also sent to Bangladesh if the government of Bangladesh wants it. And I think that is the crucial part here, of course. But there are so many actors that need to play together to make this election a success. And if there's something we can do, we are very happy to do so.
Thank you. Ambassador Alex, would you like to add anything?
No, I would agree with my my Norwegian colleague. I mean, starting point is, of course, the great importance that we all attach democratic governance and human rights. And I think that the process has already started. In order to have an inclusive and sustainable society, having a process that is transparent is of course a key. And we are also stand ready to engage in any possible way that Bangladesh would want us to do. Electoral observer mission being one element, but there are several. But I think that in terms of having an inclusive dialogue and having all stakeholders involved, it is of course crucial.
Ambassador Winnie?
No, I can only agree with my colleagues here. Maybe just mention that two of us, and that's one of the differences, are members of the EU, where this is also part of our dialogue with Bangladesh. There were consultations in Brussels just the other week where that was also discussed, as we can see from the newspapers.
Okay, that's great. Espen, how long you have been here, Bangladesh?
I've been here since the darkest period of the COVID pandemic. I arrived in September 2020.
September 2020.
Yes.
So how did you find Bangladesh?
I found it closed, but fortunately it has since opened up, and I knew quite a lot about Bangladesh from before, because I had been working with Bangladesh issues 10-15 years back from my Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Oslo. But it's a fascinating country to come to, and it's been good to see now that the pandemic has been sort of handled in a good way here, and that we are now seems to be quite back to a reasonably normal situation, although of course it has not totally gone away. But I'm very happy to be in Bangladesh.
Thank you. Alex, what's about you? How long have you been here?
Well, actually, I came a couple of days before Espen. So me and my family came in August 2020. And I think that I've taken the opportunity between the waves of the pandemic to travel Bangladesh, and now looking forward to traveling even more. It has been 2 intense years in different ways, but absolutely fascinating. So we're just in the beginning of our journey, and look forward to understand and to learn more.
Ambassador Winnie?
Yeah, I actually came a couple of years before my good colleagues.
Almost how many years? Four?
I came September 2018, so I'll almost be here for 4 years. And I also find it very, very interesting. So many good things that we can do together, Bangladesh and Denmark. So many exciting things on the way. 2 years setback under COVID, so I decided to take an extra year just because it's so fascinating.
Thank you. So we are almost at the end of the program. So any final words from you for the viewers, Espen?
No, I think one of the things that really fascinates me in Bangladesh is the population, the friendliness, their hardworking nature, their resilience, and the way that they never get broken. I think that Bangladesh has a great future, and if we can in any way sort of contribute to providing some help in that process, I'm very happy to do so.
Thank you, Ambassador Winnie. Any final words for the viewers?
Yes, thank you for this opportunity to you, first of all. To your viewers, I would say, yes, Bangladesh is a fascinating place. A lot is going on, economically, socially, and I look very much forward to the coming years, to the next 50 years of relations between my country, Denmark, and Bangladesh. I'm sure that we'll achieve good and important things here.
Ambassador Alex.
Yes, thanks for the opportunity. I think my message is the following. I mean, now we have been discussing trade and commerce and politics and development cooperation, but the relationship between countries is also the people-to-people relationship. And when I look back at the 5 decades, it's filled with these amazing personal stories about, you know, Sweden and Bangladesh. So it has been a privilege to discover some of these stories that make up the relationship. One of the highlights during my tenure so far, and something that I will look forward to continue doing, is speaking to young people here. It's a huge proportion of the population, and you know, the dynamics, the engagement that you meet from them is something that really stays with me. So I look forward to wherever I go to speak to young people out there, and also share my perspective of Sweden and Bangladesh relations.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador Winnie Estrup Petersen, Ambassador Espen Rikter-Svendsen, and Ambassador Alexandra Berg von Linde. Thank you so much. Thanks indeed for being with us. And this was very fascinating discussion. Thank you so much. Bangladesh has had a long and prosperous relationship with the Nordic nations of Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. Over the last 50 years, the 3 countries have become close development partners for Bangladesh. And as we are on the path to graduating from LDC status, we can expect the strategic relationship to become even more robust and fruitful for all parties. As the looming threat of climate change threatens the development of Bangladesh in the near future, we will continue to look forward on Nordic development partners to provide guidance on mitigating and adapting to an increasingly hostile environment. By working together, we hope that we might be able to create a better world for all future generations to come. That's all for this moment. Thank you all for joining us.